Good evening, everyone, and good evening to everyone who's catching up on this live on the recording. Really nice to have you here. So hope you've all had a really nice weekend if you're watching this on the Sunday evening or Sunday, whichever time it might be in wherever you might be in the world. So today we're going to continue on our 30-day 30 tips challenge for Microsoft 365 tips. And today we're going to cover a couple of the apps within Microsoft 365, being Teams or Microsoft Teams and SharePoint. So we are going to show you the initial parts of file management within Microsoft Teams and also how that links in to your SharePoint environment, and also just kind of touch on what SharePoint is and how that links then and underpins really the file management within Microsoft Teams. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to try and convey this information in about 5 minutes for you. So stick around, it's not going to be long, and I promise you'll hopefully get something out of the information that I'm about to share. So let's share the screen here. Okay, so here I am in my Teams client, as you see, and I'm here in my Fiesta of Food team, and I've got a few channels in here set up to manage this project. Now, you will see that I use, for example, the Spanish Food Festival as an example for lots of my demos. That's because I'm slightly obsessed with Spain. I love the food, I love the culture, I love the people. So you might see that quite a bit in my demos, but that's the reason why. And kind of it means that I can kind of have a look at some of this info about things from Spain for me to do when I'm there. So yeah, that's the main reason behind that. So okay, carrying on with the Fiesta of Food file management. So let's say we have some files here in the budget channel. So this is for budgeting, and we've got a tab here up at the top for files. So up at the top here for files, and then you'll see that you basically have what looks like a very basic interface here with one file currently in there. Now, straight away from Teams, we can do a few things in terms of file management. We can click here up at the top again, and we can click New, and we can create immediately Word, Excel, PowerPoint documents, and we can work on those online and within Teams very easily. So let's click on Word document there, for example. So let's create a Word document there, and you'll see that it will load up Word for us directly. We didn't have to do anything to open up Word itself, and we already have a fairly fully featured Word client here within Microsoft Teams. Okay, let's close that one. So creating new files. We can also put a bit more structure into this by creating a new folder. So let's create a new folder for other info, and we can do exactly the same with this. So we can add files in here, we can create new files, we can upload them, we can do all of those kind of file kind of operations here directly within Microsoft Teams. Now I'm going to go back to the budget here, and the next step that I was going to show you is what on earth is SharePoint and what does that have to do with underpinning the file system within Microsoft Teams. Well, you'll see here that up at the top of the client, of the Teams client, we have a button here for Open in SharePoint. So take note that we're here in our budget channel here. So I'm going to open this in SharePoint, and this will open up a browser window for me, and it will go to, as you can see here at the top, an app called SharePoint, which is part of the Office 365 or Microsoft 365 suite. So here we have SharePoint here, which is an app in itself. Now, this is a SharePoint team site. So a team site underpins this Microsoft Teams it's a Microsoft Teams team, but it's also underpinned by a SharePoint team site. So this is the team site, and within Microsoft SharePoint team sites, we have a place for documents, and this is actually where all of our documents for Microsoft Teams are stored. So they are stored within SharePoint. It's just that Microsoft Teams gives us a window into the SharePoint environment. So each of these Microsoft SharePoint sites also comes with a notebook that's shared between the group that has access to the site. We have conversations that can happen within that site as well. We have some pages, so we can actually kind of create pages to convey information within this team or group also. And then in order to see how this reflects within the structure, so you can see here on the right hand side, this is our SharePoint site. We're in the budget folder, and you'll be able to see that this is this is in fact exactly the same as what we see within Microsoft Teams. Now, if I click, for example, on General here within Microsoft Teams, you'll see that the files, we have a couple there. So let's go back to our SharePoint site here. Let's go up one level to Documents. Now, the first thing to notice here is the fact that when you go up to the top level, the documents of the SharePoint site, you'll notice that actually these folders are following on from the channels that we have here. So we have these channels here, and each of those channels has its own folder to keep documents. And that's where really the link comes in. So each of these channels has its own folder in order to manage those documents. And again, we can see this. So we have a couple of files there in the general channel. So let's go into the general folder, and there we have it. We have our couple of files there. So what does this mean? Well, the file management within Microsoft Teams is not kind of hugely featured. It means that you can edit, you can kind of work on those files, but you can't really add anything else. However, if we go back to our SharePoint site, you'll see we can add more, for example, metadata, and we might come to this in one of our other tips. So we can add additional metadata into these files to describe them or to say what they're about, or we can link them to other areas, etc. And also within SharePoint, we can do things like we can check the file in, we can approve the file, we can do a lot of additional kind of manipulation within SharePoint that we can't do within Teams. And that just means that we have the power of SharePoint, but we have the simplicity of Teams to be able to work on those files and to be able to kind of work on in the day-to-day in one window. And when we need to, we can come here into SharePoint and we can kind of do the additional, more complex stuff that we need in order to manage those files in a better way. Okay, and that's all we have time for today. So thank you very much for joining us. We hope that the rest of your evening goes well, or the rest of your day, wherever you might be. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll hopefully see you for tomorrow's tip. Okay, thanks very much.